That's the plan. So don't miss out on all that. Lots of stuff going on during the week. Lots of ways to stay prepared with me and the channel and Tia and everything else that we've got rocking here. So thank you, everyone. Do hit the like button if you haven't already. And I think it's pretty much time, with that being said, to get into it. So here we are. This is the episode numero uno of the SHTF Survival Scenarios, Prepping 2022. So this is going to be carrying on through to 2023 as well. All new subjects, all new topics each week for the Prepping for 2022. So, as you know, tonight we're talking about advanced principles of prepping, because what we need to do is we need to cover off a bunch of stuff that just needs to be covered off, right? We need to have a starting point that we all start from. That covers all the basics and the advanced principles of preparedness and the sorts of things that we need to make sure, and some of the mistakes and traps that we're not getting ourselves into, which are very easy to fall prey to. And a lot of what you're going to see today, as a preface, right? A lot of the things that you're going to see me talk about today are actually things that have come from many, many years of talking to Patreon VIPs, my co-preppers, prepper friends, and things like this. So this comes from real life experience. This isn't about watching preparedness channels and people all like Canadian Prepper and Alaska Prepper and then just doing a regurg version of that. This is totally different. This is completely uncharted territory, some of the things we're going to talk about, right? So this is more to do with real life experiences that I've had, real life interactions that I've had with people that either call themselves preppers or are preppers, right? And there's just things that you learn along the way, right? So I'm going to be sharing that with you today so that we can get a starting point and we can get an idea of, you know, first of all, why do we need to prepare, right? As if we need a reason. But this is less to do with all the things that are happening in the world, and really more to do with, and I did flow through this last week as a sort of soft launch. So those that watched the preliminary first 5 slides last week or whatever, you can just ignore the first 5 slides, right? So why do we need to prepare? Now, this is more to do with the fact that modern Western societies are, you know, they've been suffering from learned dependency, where things have become so convenient, so easy, everything's so done for us. You've got health and safety laws all over the place that make it impossible to hurt yourself. And that's another form of learned dependency, right? And so people become more vulnerable as a result, because they become more reliant on technology, they become more reliant on government, on structure, on things like this, right? So on top of all of that, right, we have a problem with current modern society because of our reliance on so many things. So, for example, self-reliance is at an all-time low. You know, a lot of people have got they haven't got gardens, they haven't got goats and chickens, they don't have any means to keep themselves rocking unless there's a Walmart nearby. Or a grocery store nearby, right? So globalized, fragile supply chain, we've seen the effect of that over the last 3 years, have we not? So I don't need to explain that one too heavily. And of course, that's the problem, and that's all part of the JIT system, the just-in-time system, as well as it being globalized. So if like one country has a problem, it means it causes a cascade problem across the other countries, and then we all see the effect. And of course, if one country can't get a particular object that's required for the supply of something else, then they can't supply that something else, which could be required by another factory to supply some other object, right? And so that domino effect is what's been happening over the last 3 years. And we're starting to see the culmination of that. I was calling the bullhorn on all this shortages stuff 3 years ago. Well, 2.5, January 2020, basically, right? Was when I released my first preparedness pack and stuff like that, right? And I said about the food shortages then because of the crops that weren't that hadn't been planted and things, and the JIT system, right, the just-in-time system, because most shopping centres and malls and supermarket stores don't have a storeroom anymore, because it's just an inefficient use of money, because you're having to pay extra amounts of money for renting your warehouse to keep storage, right? So it makes more sense for big mass distribution centres, those that haven't burnt down yet, mass food distribution centres to hold pallets and pallets and pallets of loads of food. And then the supermarket chain, let's say, you know, your Costco or whatever, as somebody buys 5 5 bags of rice and it gets beep, 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 beep through the checkout, those 5 bags of rice get put on the lorry for tomorrow's delivery or later on today's delivery, right? So whatever that shop sells that day is what gets delivered the day after. So there's no need for any stock on the shelves. It just needs to work perfectly, yeah? Like, you know, a crazy version of Tetris, but in time, yeah? And it's a chain system, so if there's one link in that chain broken, there's no redundancies, there's bad news, everything collapses all at one go. So then we got the fact that the resources are stretched to the maximum, the population density is so much greater, and of course the resources can only supply a certain number of people, fresh water, food supply, crop losses and things like that also put pressure on the resources being stretched, right? So, and of course we're critically reliant on tech, you know, without energy, without power, and we're going to see a lot of that today that I'm going to talk about, is the importance of energy and what happens when you don't have energy with an SHTF, which is one of the first things to go. And of course, being critically reliant on technology as we are, people basically lose their minds, you know, when there's no power and there's no torch light, there's no light in... Funnily enough, even today, excuse me, even today, the old clicky light switch in the bathroom, yeah, just completely snapped as I went to get in the shower. So, good example of things just randomly breaking, right? And we'll get into that in a minute as well. So, this is the thing with being critically reliant on tech, you know, I've just pulled the light and junk, oh man, it's like I'm showering in darkness, so I've got a torch and done it upside down, pointing at the ceiling. And that's how I've been rolling tonight, right? So I'll fix that tomorrow. But yeah, without technology, things become difficult, even having a shower, right? Particularly at night time with no light. And of course, poverty and crime on the rise, we have to worry about security and protection. So this is what we got going on. And of course, why should you bother listening to me? And those that know me from back in the day, let's say, will know the reasons why. But for those that are new here, as I said, there's lots of great prepper YouTube channels out there offering some great preparedness information, but there's a lot of them are offering some pretty bad information as well. And if you're following too much of a bad information, then of course that could be pretty fatal, right? Quite literally. If you consume the wrong thing, or you're, you know, you pick the wrong berry or something crazy like that, right? There's a lot of ways that we can come unstuck as preppers with you know, with survival. So I've been prepping for more than 20 years. I've lived all the way around the world. Everything you'll see here is exclusive and original. Everything you see I've made myself. I'm not, you know, I haven't got loads of money. I pay loads of media companies to make anything for me. It's all made from scratch in-house by me alone and no one else. And including all of my content. It's not copied and pasted from anywhere, which is, you know, what you expect, right? So I'm a polymath and autodidact. Look it up. Visited almost 40 countries. I've been on the Amazing Race and stuff like that. I've spent my life challenging myself, putting myself outside of my comfort zone. And I've lived in places like Southeast Asia and like near Middle East kind of area, where I've experienced all sorts of global SHTF experiences firsthand. Tsunamis in Asia, I was there through all that. Earthquakes, you know, water being turned off 3 days of the week for a year, living in places like Cyprus and stuff like that, right? Been in the middle of India, you know, crazy places like that, with nothing more than a backpack. So these are all things that are important to know, that somebody's been out of their comfort zone on a regular basis. And of course, I do the bushcraft and survival all year, every year, as part of my hobby. And my son's right into Cubs, Scouts, and everything else. So it's great that it's in the family. And I come from a varied background, prototype engineering being one of them. So in terms of my critical thinking type style, you know, I think through things logically, and that's all I can do. And I come to conclusions that you either agree with or you don't, but they'll usually come from either experience and or, you know, all of that stuff. So that's that boring stuff out of the way. So what do we think then are the most plausible SHTF scenarios? And there's lots of them, right? There's lots of reasons why we could be thrust into a SHTF scenario, or WROL, without rule of law, which is you know, where things break down to the point where the police aren't coming to your rescue, the paramedics aren't coming to your rescue, and it's just basically everyone for everyone, Mad Max scenario, right? So widespread hardware failure could bring the grid down, for example, you know, some sort of solar flare doing something like that. Or, you know, you've got a societal economic collapse as well, is highly probable, which that itself has a mass cascade effect on everything. You've got a major weather disaster could happen. We've got this Hurricane Ian at the moment I'm really worried about. I haven't seen Extreme Focus popping himself in the chat, and I do understand that he was under an evacuation order. I don't know if he's followed it or not, but so many of my VIPs and subscribers I care so much for, and you know, you get to learn about all their lives going on. I mean, our Lafsme here, not that long ago, she had the wildfires up near the California way, licking up her garden path, literally, right? So these are real things that are happening to people every day. The stuff we're talking about today is more of a global scale or more of a sort of long-term scale, right? So these are all the things that could be catching us out. Military EMP, that's looking more and more likely, isn't it, right? Solar flare EMP or other black swan event, you know, some undefined, didn't see that coming event. Now, if you want to keep up with the various SHTF scenarios, the things that are most likely to get us before anything else, the best way you can do that is get yourself over to sigmaprepper.com, and you'll see there the link to the SHTF Intel. And again, I do the SHTF Intel reports as part of the Sigma Prepper live show. But if you just head over to the sigmaprepper.com website, this will be the homepage. When shit is the fan, don't end up around a campfire eating squirrels on sticks. Get prepared with Sigma Prepper, right? So yeah, this is what you're looking for. SHTF Intel 2022, right? And there's a link up the top in the menu up here as well. Look, SHTF Intel. But basically on here, you can go in here any day. There's the most recent artificial intelligence global threat analysis report. And here's the top 5 threats that we're facing right now. And here's all of those threats in order of a percentage likelihood of happening within the next sort of like, you know, well, anything more than 70% is basically inevitable, right? So all of this is basically inevitable at this point. This is how far down the line we are. Things down here we don't need to worry about wasting our time with, right? Zombie apocalypse, pole shift, pole flip. Pole shift is happening all the time. Actual pole flip, unlikely in our, you know, when we need to worry about it. And that's the point, is that things like this and things like this are going to get us way before that other stuff's going to get us, right? So you can head yourself over there to sigmaprepper.com anytime you want, and you'll see what you need to see each day it gets updated. So go and check that out. So the situation report then, this is it. Here we go. I hope you're sitting. I hope you're sitting comfortably. We should be in onesies, ideally, watching this, shouldn't we now? Right. The situation report. So the following hypothetical, but very likely and plausible SHTF scenario is based on real events that have happened frequently throughout history. So, complete grid down scenario. So, lights out, like is happening in lots of places around the world right now, which is why we need to get this covered as quick as possible. Inoperable sewage systems, inoperable water systems. So basically your taps aren't going to work. Your flushy is not going to work. Complete cell and internet outage. So there's no communicating with anyone. There's no talking to anyone with your cell phone or calling them up on the telephone, landline or anything like that, right? And of course the cell towers have battery backup that's good for about 48 hours or so. Most of them are less than 12 hours. And once they go into battery backup situation on the cell towers, they go into emergency mode, which means there's no data. It's just emergency. It's text messages and emergency phone calls to 911, 999 and other, right? So major transport disruptions, of course, because without power, you're not going to have your pumps working in your fuel stations. You're not going to be filling your cars and your trucks up. And of course, all trade and commerce ceases anyway, because there's no registers and tills working with no power. And of course, there's no ATMs or cash machines working, so there's no getting any cash out. And even if you could get cash out, again, most shops using the JIT system we talked about, all use the barcode system to scan it. There's no prices on any products anymore. So most people on the checkout don't even know how much each thing is, and there's no sticker on each thing with a price on it. Gone are the days where we can start doing trade with cash again. Just forget about it, right? Even if you had cash, the shop can't deal with it. But what's most important is that the grid down scenario at the top actually creates every single one of these after it. So you only need that first one to happen, and all those other ones happen anyway. That's why we are so vulnerable to a grid down scenario. And it's just not a good look, right? So our mission, should we choose to accept it, which we have because we ain't going down like that, is prepare for a complete and sustained grid down scenario, including subsequent cascades of failure, like we've just seen. That includes sewage systems, that includes water not working, and so on, right? Gather required preps and resources to homestead during SHTF, and we'll be comparing 1 week, 1 month, 6 months, and 1 year of preps and see what that looks like. So we want to be surviving an SHTF with minimal loss, harm, or damage to you, your loved ones, or your property. Because we don't want to get through this and just be like, you know, barely surviving at the end of it and dragging ourselves along the floor, you know, with like only a couple of limbs left. You know, this is assuming we want to be somewhat comfortable in our existence, right? And of course, as it says here, we're dealing with a homestead scenario. I will be doing a dedicated prepping for 2022 series, which will include specifically bugging out and the like, which will just be a different thing altogether, covering that. But today we're dealing with a homestead scenario. So the objectives then, we're going to learn how to prepare with maximum efficiency, as in we don't want to be buying stuff we don't need, and we don't want to be not buying stuff that we did need, and so on, right? We want to make sure we buy as much as we need and not too much, and so on. So we're going to minimize the risk of missing out on critical items and other common prepper oversights. And there's lots of them. See working examples of false economy traps to avoid. There's a lot of things that you can spend way more money than you needed to. If you think ahead a little bit, like we're going to do today with some critical thinking, you'll see what I'm talking about. So we need to ensure we're getting the most survival juice out of our prepping squeeze. That's right. The most survival juice out of our prepping squeeze. Cheers, my fellow Sigmas and fellow preppers. Thank you everyone in the chat. Really appreciate you all being with us. Danger Bob in the house. Great to see you, my man. Shopping for some big items this week, says Noel Marie. I'll try and keep my eye on the chat as well as we go through, but we'll have more of a question answer bit at the end. And obviously on the way through, do put your things in the chat because everyone's talking about things while we're there. And of course, in the description below, in the comment section below, if you're watching this afterwards, which I hope you are, there's a lot in this one, so I hope you'll watch it several times and you know, make notes as you need to. So, unique considerations. Now, all of what I'm going to talk about today is assuming certain things, right? And of course, there's certain things that I'm not going to take into consideration. Most of those being the ones that you see here. So your climate and environment is an issue for you. You know, I can't account for people like Margie Mulder or you know, who are in basically up near Alaska, right? And you got people, you know, who are like Connie, for example, who is in the middle of desert in California kind of area, and people like Lafsme in hot regions, and you've got different problems, right, with AC, with, you know, log burners and stoves, and so there's too many things to allow for. So we're just going to assume a temperate climate for this, and of course, subject to your climate and your environment, you'll need to have things that other people won't need, and so on, right? So we're bearing that in mind. Of course, the local laws and restrictions are also important because things that we can buy in the UK when it comes to protection and firearms and things like this aren't quite the same as you can get in the States, for example. Canada are getting a little bit more strict on it, but there's still things that you can do and can't do. Australia has different laws as well about certain things. So you need to be aware of that. And that includes things like ham radio stuff. But of course, we are assuming to a degree without rule of law. So, you know, that does take into that account all of that. And of course, talking of without rule of law, your local culture and your local crime levels in your specific area, country, town, whatever, is going to be specific to you. So the gnarliness that could be expected from a major Mad Max scenario in your area is going to be different to somebody else's, right? And equally, if you're in a rural off-grid cabin environment versus a city apartment, obviously, as you can imagine, totally different ball game, right? So, you know, we're gonna, and again, I'll be doing a separate show to do with prepping from a city apartment, prepping, you know, from a rural position, because it's a different thing. There's other shows I've got lined up as well, prepping for vulnerable people, right? People who have disabilities, for example, women who are on their own, for example. I've got a show dedicated to top tips and tricks to give you major force multipliers and things like that, right? So we'll be dealing with those things separately in separate shows. But today, just to bear in mind that we're not going to be dealing with some of these things because, of course, property size, garden, available space, when we're talking about 6 months, 1 year's worth of preps, you ain't fitting that in a 1-bedroom apartment in the city. It's not happening, right? So bear that in mind, right? Obviously. Family size dependence, you know, what I'm going to be dealing with here is, you know, maybe a couple, 1 or 2 people with a small child, maybe an individual, stuff like that. If you've got 6 children, if you've got 20 guinea pigs and 4 horses to deal with, then of course, and you've maybe got a sick mother or a sick father that you're caring for who's, you know, who's bedridden. Again, these are the the dependents and things that you're going to need to scale up and down for accordingly. And of course, disabilities, as I said, you know, these are going to play a role as well. If when it comes to transport, you're going to have some different problems to solve. And again, that's a separate show, but your health needs need to be taken into consideration as well with your preparedness needs. If you've got some critical medication, that's going to come up close and that's going to come up front. So budget and financial means, of course, you know, that's my biggest weakness, is I've got all these great plans and all these great things I'd love to do, but of course it is all subject to budget. So what I'm going to be doing today is trying to try and find ways that we can prepare in a far more economical way. It's more important that we don't waste money on things that we wish we hadn't have spent money on, right? Because they could have been spent on more important stuff. So personal survival and self-defense knowledge. I mean, I've done some mixed martial arts with my son and things, but you know, it's not like I'm a cage fighter with like 1 million machine guns on my wall or anything like that. So what I specialize in is preparedness for normal people who want force multipliers to be able to do better than 99.9% of anybody else in your neighborhood. That's all you need to make sure you're good at. Everything else will fall into place. So bear in mind, that's the considerations, right? So where do I even start? This is what most people get to. Where do we even start with prepping? Especially getting new to it. You know, because how do you know which preps to start with first? How do you know what order to get things in? And, you know, what skills you need to develop and so on, right? So what we can do is start with what's most important and what's most urgent first, called the Eisenhower Matrix. And it looks like this. So, super easy. Not urgent, going down. And then not important, going horizontally. Why can't I do a horizontal line in mirror format? So basically what we do is we look at the top left there. It's urgent and it's important, so you need to basically do it, right? So things like I don't know, like your medication's about to run out, right, which is critical for you. It's urgent because it's running out, and it's important because without it, you're going to be coming unstuck. Whereas other things like getting the decorating done in the house because, you know, the paint's looking a little bit pale, then, you know, that's not really important and it's not particularly urgent. So I'd suggest eliminating that with the current times and the current situation, right? As an example. But if it's something like you need to organise your preps and you need to sort of go through some things and make sure that you're getting your sell-by dates in order, then, you know, it's not particularly, you know, you see the delegate there. It's not really important. Well, that's a schedule thing. It's important but not urgent, right? But you could delegate that sort of stuff, right, as well. Do you see? So start with these things. Start with the do it stuff, and then, you know, start working through and schedule the other things if they're still important but they're just not urgent, and you know, things that you can delegate to other people to help you with that are, you know, they're not important as in if they get messed up, right? But they are urgent. So keep that in mind, because that's a classic. You use this in business and all sorts of stuff. It's, you know, it's pretty well defined. So keep that in mind if you don't know where to start in terms of prioritization. Some people aren't very good at it, so that might help you. So classic prepping mistakes then, this is important. Now, we're going to be looking at some preppers who think that they're prepped, but they're not. Right? They think they're prepped, but they're not. Now, these are the sorts of things we talked about earlier with the, you know, the hidden prepper mistakes. Yeah? So, cheers everyone. Multiple unseen short and long-term threats. Overconfidence in a single discipline. You know, people just bought loads of one thing because that's what they like, you know, and they haven't really thought about anything else because they don't really understand it or are not really into it, right? So, and that, you know, you're getting overconfident, single discipline, you know, somebody who's like an ex-nurse or something and like, you know, they're a prepper, but all they've got is like major levels of first aid kits, and that's about it. They've got no food and nothing. They just got loads of first aid kits, right? And you see that a lot. People tend to have, you know, they tend to have a little bit more weighted towards one area than another. And we'll be looking at exactly that, right? So, you know, and this is one of the things that gives people a false sense of security. And there's lots of complacency there. And yeah, a lot of half-baked and badly thought through plans, which we'll be covering as well. And yeah, illogical investments in survival gear and preps. The amount of things I see people buy, and I'm like, proper face palm. And yeah, some false economy traps that we are going to be trying to help you to avoid. Now, what we're going to be doing, this is an important bit. We're going to be looking at some prepper profiles, right? So as I just mentioned, people generally tend to be weighted, and these are going to be people that I've actually know in real life, or my VIP Patreon members that I talk to one-to-one over many months and years with both this and other channels in the past, and learned so much from the preparedness community of what their situations are. I do a lot of one-to-one consultancy for preparedness. You know, I understand people's own situations to a great detail, and then I put forward some solutions and some plans based specific to their needs. And again, like I said, because of all those considerations we looked at with your area, your property size, your, you know, what sort of laws you got around you and what your budget is. So, you know, we look at things like this and then we talk, you know, discuss that through and come up with a plan, right? But I have noticed that I've met one of each of these at least, right, before in my life, yeah? And there's nothing wrong with it. I'm not saying there's anything wrong with you, and none of you know who you are, right? Some of you aren't even Patreon members anymore, or friends anymore even, right? But I'm interested to know which one you are. If you feel like you fall into one category more than another, then please tell me in the comment section below if you're watching this afterwards, or in the chat live, right? So we'll go through them and we'll see if we can identify some trends here, right? So yeah, which one are you? Analysing examples of common prepper mistakes and oversights. We'll also look at some solutions for incremental prepping. Prepper profiles. Which one are you? So here we go then. So to introduce you to what I've got going on here, then this scale down the bottom is the time in months. So this is you know, if all of your bars were up this end to 24, you'd be good for 2 years of prepping, right? You would be able to survive 2 years with your preps, is the theory, right? Now, this is the unprepared. So we're starting with the unprepared, right? Which is just, you know, everybody else who isn't watching this, right? And many of our friends and family, if not all of our friends and family typically, because we tend to be one of many, one out of like 100 people we know that happen to be survivalists and enthusiastic preppers and stuff like that, and enjoy that life of being prepared, particularly more and more recently, where there's been more and more reasons to be prepared, as we looked at earlier on in this show, right? But check it out, this is a typical unprepared, and as you can see down the bottom in time there, what are they doing? They're making it about a month. They're making it about a month. And you see up the top there, we got that predicted outcome. So that predicted outcome is, you know, boom. Survival sustained for 3 to 4 weeks max. Squirrels on sticks after that. Squirrels on sticks, Andy. Yes, squirrels on sticks, don't forget. Yeah. When it's hitting the fan, don't end up around a campfire eating squirrels on sticks. Don't forget, sigmaprepper.com website if you want to go and check it out. And go and give me some love on the Sigma Prepper website and all my social media. You can follow everything there. So, yeah, the thing is, right, is they haven't really got much of anything. Now, what I will say is, of course, you know, the rule of threes, just to deal with that, in case you're not aware, I'm sure you are, but the rule of threes, which is like 3 minutes without air, 3 hours without shelter, subject to your environment, but 3 hours is all it takes without shelter. 3 days without water. Yeah, we had a question about that on the Prepper quiz, don't forget. 3 weeks without food. And then 3 months, this is just one I add in, but 3 months without love, yeah? And hugs. Again. So, rule of threes. You can survive a month, but the point is that by the time things have been gnarly for a month, and again, this is a separate show, it's called the Grid Down Scenario, analysed day by day, and in that show I'll be doing, maybe even next week, maybe the week after, looks at what happens day by day. And believe me, when you get to week 2, things are looking so gnarly, if you don't have any security and protection, you ain't even making it past the first month anyway. The first week's very different, right? Because when things happen in a week, if the power all turns back on, like, you know, if the power goes off on the Sunday and then the power goes back on like the Saturday, the following Saturday, by then, yeah, there might have been a few extra robberies than normal. There might have been a few extra shops looted than normal, but it's not going to be Mad Max, is it? Let's face it. Whereas when that's been going on for a month and people haven't been eating for 3 weeks and they're just on the verge of, then yes, things get epically gnarly. So even if their bodies were able to sustain themselves for, you know, 2 months with the food they've just got rocking in themselves, there's more to it, right? So this is what the average Joe looks like. Now, this is the hunter prepper profile, and the hunter is somebody that I know or used to know back in the day, and he was a prepper. He would call himself a prepper, and he would always go on about how he could live for like at least 2 years, year and a half, 2 years, right? So this is the unprepared won't be eating squirrels on sticks, says Amphir. Great to see you. The unprepared won't be eating squirrels on sticks around a campfire. Most work be able to make a campfire, let alone hunt a squirrel. Classic. Yes. You got to know how to make a campfire and hunt squirrels first. You're absolutely right, Amphir. But desperation throwing rocks at enough squirrels, believe me, you'll get one. Right, and you bang enough flints together in absolute desperation, you'll get a spark at some point, right? You just got to hope it's within 3 days. Okay, so hunting and growing, check it out. This is where this prepper is excelling big time. They can survive 18 months. But can they survive 18 months? This is what we're looking at, because the problem is that they're going to come unstuck way before. And I'll tell you a good example is that actually last week on our VIP after party on Discord, one of our VIPs, he was talking about fishing in the local lake, right? And I said to him, I said, you know, how big are the fish, blah, blah, blah. And there's basically the sort of fishing that you'd want to be getting 1 fish a day to eat, right? To sort of stay somewhat sustained. Now, the thing is that I said to him, and his name's Robert, and we all love him dearly, right? And I said to Robert, Robert, just out of interest, mate, I said, when you're, watch out, because whenever Andy picks up his calculator, you know we're all in trouble, right? So he says to me, he goes fishing down the lake. I said, Robert, just out of interest, mate, how many casts and how many hooks do you think you lose per fish you catch, right? So how many casting out your hooks, catching a fish, don't catch a fish, get it caught in the reeds, line snaps or whatever, lose your bait, lose your whatever, lose your hook, right? And he said usually about 4 hooks per fish. So I said, you're telling me, Robert, that for every fish you catch, you've used 4 hooks? He says, yes. Whoa. And you need to catch 1 fish a day to live on the thing. So then I thought to myself, well, 4 hooks a day times 365 days, right? Times 2 years, because matey boy here, let's call it 2 years, right? You're talking 2,920. Yeah, 2,920 hooks. Hooks that you're going to need in your bait box to survive this long. Catching fish. But you know the other problem with being a hunter in this scenario and not dealing with getting your food storage sorted out, your water and filtration sorted out. Theoretically, this dude ain't getting past what, month 2? Got enough stored water to last 2 months or whatever? Yeah? So how are you going to survive for 18 months if you're telling me, oh, I'm a hunter, don't worry about me? Yeah? I can go fishing, I can shoot pigeons, I can shoot squirrels. Well, the problem is you and about 1 million other people are going to have the same idea on the same day. And you're going to be out there down a fishing lake, right? And there's going to be 30 other people down that fishing lake when every other day there's like 2 or 3 people max. Week 1. The end of week 1, you'll go down the lake, believe me, right in a fishing pond or whatever. People ain't going to be putting them fish back, right? They're going to be down there. There's going to be 30, 40, 50 people down there, not 2 or 3. And they're going to be reeling them in and they're going to be getting out of there, right? Now, this is the problem, is that first of all, those fish ain't going to last 18 months in that lake. Believe me, not when you got like 100 people fishing at once rather than 3. It's not sustainable. Everyone knows that. Anyone who's got any old fishing rod in the old garage is going to be dusting that thing off. Yeah, finding any old reel, any old bit of string, and just through sheer desperation. So you're going to be competing with those people. What's more, if you're going to be doing hunting, that's not exactly homesteading, is it? Because how are you getting to the lake and back? How are you going to get to the lake, catch your fish, and then hope somehow walk home carrying your fish down the road, right? Believe me, there's going to be a bunch of dudes standing on a street corner going, oi, matey boy, come here. We'll be having them fish, thank you, please. On your way. In fact, they probably won't let you go on your way. Right? They'll be taking your fishing rod. They'll be taking your fish. You won't even get home. Not to mention, this dude I'm talking about, and it's not Robert. Robert's just a guy who's one of my friends in the VIP Patreon who goes fishing, right? But this guy, what was even more interesting is that, and again, he's talking about shooting pigeons and stuff. And squirrels, you're going to have the same problem. Everyone's going to be trying to shoot pigeons and squirrels, right? So there's not going to be many pigeons and squirrels left. And you're not even supposed to eat pigeons because of what pigeons eat. But we ain't getting into that. That's for another show. But the point is that the outcome, food shortage due to unseen threats, travelling to hunt and bait, etc. So where they think they can survive hunting and growing, they can't because, you know, without your security and protection, you're just going to get mugged, right? Traveling to your hunting ground, traveling back from your hunting ground. Do you know the other problem is this dude that the hunter one's based on? He had a wife and 3 children. A wife and 3 children. So I said to him, I was like, dude, when you're disappearing off to the to the fishing lake, or you're disappearing off to the woods with your traps and your air rifle, right? Who's looking after your missus and your 3 kids? Because you're going to have people coming around your neighbourhood, knocking on your door, and your missus is going to be answering the door, and your kids are going to be in the background, and you ain't going to be there to protect them because you're too busy out there fishing in a lake. You get my point. So, don't be the hunter, but let me know if you're the hunter type. Yeah, if you think that you fall in line with a hunter type of prepper, you know, do own up to it, because it's important that we acknowledge where we fit into this and understand the mistakes we're making, right? So, the kitchen queen. We all know a kitchen queen, right? I know loads of kitchen queens. Nothing wrong with kitchen queens, because they're actually pretty good preppers. Now, as you can see here, there's a little bit of a disproportion. You know, we've spent loads and loads of money on food storage, right? So if you can't read it on the left-hand side there, I'll just read it down the list so we can have a bit more we can be more accurate. So water and filtration, this includes water tanks, Berkey filters, Sawyer mini filters and things like this, purification tablets, right? Because we're assuming there's no water coming out your faucet, out your tap, right? So food storage, we're talking about MREs, you know, long storage food, non-perishable tins, rice beans, you know, freeze-dried, this kind of stuff, vacuum sealed, oxygen absorbers. Sigma Prepper quiz last week, was it? We had a question about that. Check it out. So, security and protection. Oh, sorry, I skipped past energy and fuel, one of the most important ones. Energy and fuel, we got gas storage, batteries, battery banks, off-grid, you know, renewables and things like this, generators. And you can see here the kitchen queen. And this could be a kitchen queen because this is modern day. This is modern day prepping. So kitchen queen obviously includes men and women, right? Because men can be queens as well nowadays, quite a lot, apparently. So this isn't just necessarily women is my point here, right? But this one is a woman that I know, right? And no one who's in the chat right now and no one who's I don't know, they're not a VIP. So the energy and fuel, you got medical supplies, medication, first aid and trauma kits, antibiotics, stuff like that. Security and protection, we've got security technology, weapons, ammo, shields, vests, stuff like this. CCTV systems, that all comes under security and protection. Pets and animal supplies, of course, we can't forget about them. I'm sure we're all animal lovers here. Food, treats, medication, tools, saddles, you know, whatever you need, and so on. And of course, you've got there the hunting and growing, the fishing tackle, arrows, pellets, seeds, fertilizers and so on, right? Hardware supplies, we've got tools, screws, drill bits, saw blades, timber and tarpaulins. So lots of categories there, but they're all important in their own way, right? So we don't want to miss any of these things because they're all kind of critical. Now, energy and fuel, big time, because without energy and fuel, you're not charging your ham radios, you're not charging your torches, you're not charging your lanterns, your LED lanterns or any of that. You're going to have real problems, right? And of course, with things like AC and heating, that's a whole nother issue as well with the energy and fuel side of it, right? Because that can include your wood stockpile for your wood burning stoves and so on. So that means you can have all the food storage in the world, but if you haven't got any means to cook your food, it's not going to be a particularly nice time, is it? Especially if you're going to be trying to cook at night. Medical supplies, again, they're not doing too well here. Ideally, these guys aren't really going to live for more than about a month. Right? Because look at the security and protection, and I see this so many times. People spending like $20,000 on food preps and stuff like this, and a mountain house, buy it now, link in the description, 90 day, fuck all that, there's no links in the description. No sponsors, no nothing, no adverts, right? But, yes, right? $20,000 on food storage, but haven't spent a penny on a small off-grid power system, haven't spent a penny on any gas tanks, haven't spent a penny on any camping gas stoves, haven't spent a penny on even on a USB battery banks, nothing. And I'm like, you know, not to mention the security and protection. So again, you're going to spend 20 grand on food storage, water filtration, all the latest stuff, you know, Berkey filters coming out of you know what, you know, all the rest of it, canning, jarring, yeah, all over the place, under every bed, in every closet, in every wardrobe, right? But yeah, absolutely zero security and protection. So basically all you're doing is you're buying somebody else the food because somebody's just going to walk in and take it. Because you've got no means to stop them, look. Security and protection. Zilch. Nada. Nothing. Niente. It's bad news, right? Because I always say to people that you want to be spending at least 10 to 15% of your total investment on your preps on the means to protect them and protect your property, right? So that's personal protection, that's property protection, that's prep protection, that's diversity, dispersed geographically, stuff like that, if the budget allows and so on, right? So this person, as the predicted outcome suggests, has no protection. So they'll just be invaded, overpowered, robbed or something, right? And it's just not gonna, you know, these are the people that tell you, the irony of this is that these are the people that will tell you, I've got 2 years worth of preps. I've got 2 years worth of preps, Andy. Yeah? And I'm like, really? No, you haven't. You got 2 years worth of food that you've bought somebody else. And you've got about a month. You got about a month, because by the time you get the month down the line with an SHTF scenario like that, people are desperate as hell. And they do some crazy stuff. There'll be people who can't get out of alcohol, who can't get hold of alcohol, that are alcoholics. There'll be people who can't get hold of their drugs, that are drug addicts, who'll be going crazy. Antipsychotic drugs that have run out from your next door neighbor that you never knew was on antipsychotic drugs, that all of a sudden goes crazy. This is what you're going to be dealing with in 2 weeks, 3 weeks, 4 weeks, not like a year. So without even this is why they've got a week's worth of security and protection, because after a week things start getting more gnarly and they've got more likelihood of being robbed, home invaded. So what's the point in spending all this money on all this food? So if you're a kitchen queen, own up to it, sort it out, right? Identify it, because the first thing is to understand, yeah, that there's a problem, and then we can address it, yeah. So the commando, and again, doesn't everybody know a commando out there? Everyone knows a commando. I know loads, but this is based on a particular dude that I know, right? The commando, yeah. So basically, you know, one of them macho prepper dudes. Yeah, there's loads of them out there. Some of them have got some really big channels, but they've clearly never actually been out of their comfort zone and actually lived through an actual SHTF scenario in their life before. And I think even being on the street since I was 15, I think helps. It definitely helps you to, again, just live without anything, without any help from anyone. Where do you think the Sigma thing comes from, right? It's all about being, you know, self-developed and self-reliant and, you know, not wanting to be part of the herd and stuff like that, right? Hence the lone wolf kind of connotations to Sigma's personalities, right? It comes from that, because you realize that through these SHTF scenarios you can only rely on yourself and no one else, and your own skills, your own knowledge. So the problem is that when you're just reading stuff out of a book and you're just a dude that wants to have all the toys, this is what happens: is you got no water and filtration, you got no food storage. But you know what? This guy here that I'm basing this on was a friend of mine. I'm not really anymore. I haven't spoken to him for about 2 years. Sort of fell out over the COVID thing, as many people probably have. You know what I'm on about, right? He was one of them, lost in the fire of you know what. Couple of years ago. But he was great, because I'll tell you what, we used to do a lot of wargaming on stuff, right, with prepping and SHTF scenarios and survival scenarios and stuff like this. We used to do loads of it, right? I loved it. But you know what he said to me, right? This is this dude. Now this is in the UK, so this isn't like, you know, proper like this is just like the next best thing, right? And his attitude, now you need to be aware of this, and so do I, and so does everybody else who is a prepper, who understands how easily things can go wrong out there, is that this dude used to say to me that his plan was to just go out and rob everybody else. Right? Almost like the hunter, right, that we just looked at. But instead of, you know, going to people's houses and robbing them, just going out like, you know, with an axe or whatever he said, a spear, an axe, right? And again, this is somebody who had himself 4 children and his wife. So I'm like, again, so you're going to go out into the streets and you're going to start getting into gnarly situations, leaving your wife and your children at home, right? In a Mad Max scenario with people banging on doors and stuff, and you're just going to disappear off down the road with his brother, he reckoned. and just start going into houses, right? This is literally, you can tell why he's not a friend of mine anymore, right? Because that was all I needed to know at that point. So I thought, well, that's not exactly a solution, is it? And I'm like, first of all, you are putting yourself in so much danger because you're going to get in amongst so many gnarly situations. Even if you manage to get into someone's house, you got to hope there's not some irate wife hiding behind the cupboard door you didn't see that's just like shooting in your back, right? There's so many things that can go wrong. You're trying to get through a window and it smashes and you cut yourself and now you're bleeding out, right? There's all these crazy things that can happen. There's no paramedics, don't forget, in this scenario. No one's coming to help you. Let alone what a husband's going to do or the dude's going to do when you try going in their back door or into their shed or whatever you're looking for. Right? So it's not a very good plan. Not to mention, once you get any of their stuff, right? Once you steal their stuff out of their cupboards, probably the kitchen queen. Let's face it. I hate to say it. But it's the kitchen queen who's going to get it, right? You can see up the top there. Invaded, overpowered, robbed, right? From someone like this. Who's all about the robbing, who's all about the invading, who's all about the security and protection. But it's not security and protection, it's like... right? So we got to watch out for these people because they're out there, and I've spoken to one who used to be a friend, and this is his plan. That's not a plan, that's planning to fail. Because you're failing to plan, as they say. Because, again, all the time he's out there, his missus and his kids are left alone in the house for someone else like him to come along and knock on their door. And realise there's just some lonely woman there with 3 kids screaming in the background. 4 kids in the background. Easy target. Easy prey. So, this commando is going to come unstuck himself. Let's look at the outcome. Disproportionate focus on security and protection, limited food, meds and energy. Do you know the ironic thing about this dude as well? Is he had some stuff I won't mention, but he's got like red dot reticle sights, yeah? Red dot sights on his weapon of choice. And you see where it says there the energy and fuel, right? It's got, what, less than 2 months of energy and fuel. Now, what was really funny, as I said to this dude, I said, first of all... Well, I can't tell you what his other questions were, but I asked him, I said, what does your red dot reticle scope use? It's like a watch battery in there for anything like my ones. And he's like, yeah. I said, well, how many of them have you got? He's like, what do you mean, how many of them have I got? I said, well, you reckon you're going to, be a commando, right, and going round raping and pillaging or whatever it is you think you're going to do, right? I mean, that's not what he said, but I'm just using that phrase. So, how many? And he's like, none, just the one that's in it. So I'm like, okay, so you reckon you're going to survive 2 years just by being well-hard and a macho commando, but yet you haven't even got... If you leave your reticle red dot sight on for like accidentally overnight, you wake up in the morning and that battery's dead and that's it, you've got no sights. Well, you have if you've got iron sights, but but that was already an oversight just for like, what, 10 minutes on the phone that I was talking to him when he was going on about this new thing he'd bought and he had all this ammo that meant he could go for 2 years. It's like, well, how many batteries you got for your reticle sight? None. Just the one that's in it. Yeah, this is what I'm talking about. It's like amazing. So again, medical supplies, right? This is the irony of it as well. I said, I hope you're good at medical care. He's like, what do you mean? I said, well, dude, if you're planning on going out there robbing everyone else and climbing through broken windows and climbing over barbed wired, booby-trapped gardens, you can imagine, right? There's going to be booby traps. People are going to be creatively setting up in their gardens, front gardens, lawns, you name it, right? Think about it. You're going to be... And you're going into their territory. You're going to their property where they know every room, every corner, every vantage point, every window, every top opener, side opener. You name it, they know that about their house. You don't. You see? And I said to him, so I said, I hope you're fucking good at doing medical procedures because believe me, you're going to need to. Because you're putting yourself in harm's way so much that you have got such a high chance of being taken down accidentally. Because you're getting yourself into gnarly situations, right? Classic. No medical kit at all. I don't need medical. What do you think? Because these people think they're invincible. They think they're invincible. So be careful because they're out there. And these are the dangerous ones. right? So don't come unstuck. These guys are going to come unstuck themselves, but you need to make sure you're not going to come up unstuck like the kitchen queen does, right? You don't want to be doing the kitchen queen. Just completely ignoring security and protection. In fact, that's the same level of security and protection as the average Joe, right? Basically nothing. So next up then is the animal lover. And the fellow's probably seen Rambo as well. He's got the entire box set, Amphi, right? There's a lot of people like that, says Noel Marie. I know, scary, but we've got to protect ourselves from people like that, right? So this is the animal lover. We're all animal lovers here. How can you not be with beautiful things like our wonderful, beautiful Sigma here? Sigma Wolf. Oh! So, check it out. Classic, yeah? Animal lover. All of the focus and money spent on the pet and animal supplies. I mean, like, maybe this person thinks they're going to eat dog food and cat food, right? But this wasn't just about all the money and effort put into pets and animal supplies. It's also things like the energy and fuel, because the only energy and fuel that was considered was for things like keeping the infrared lamps running for snake pits and stuff like this. Now, the problem with the pet and animal supplies, and we'll get into this a little bit later on in the show, but the problem with the pet and animal supplies is the fact that you have to start questioning where it becomes a net negative to your preparedness survival. So, for example, if you're spending all this money to keep a pet alive that can't help keep you alive, then that's a different problem. So if you've got a dog that's like a massive dog, like we've got Hugo, for example, he's like a 60 kilo, 130 pound South African Mastiff, Bulbul. So he's clearly a net positive benefit to us from a preparedness point of view. If we had a 3-year-old child, would be considered a dependent, yeah, that would be a mouth to feed, just like the dog is a mouth to feed. But it's not offering anything positive in return, the 3-month-old child, sorry, the 3-year-old child, as the dog is, right? In terms of protection, early warning, things like this. It doesn't mean that a child's useless. You know what I'm talking about, right? It's the same as if you've got guinea pigs, or if you've got snakes, or you've got tarantulas or something. These things are actually more likely to do you harm than to save you. They'll either A, be a distraction, B, they'll be just an absolute absorption of your resources that should have been spent on things like security and protection, energy and fuel, right? Because if they had spent a little bit less money on their pet and animal supplies and put that money towards the security and protection, maybe some hunting and growing stuff, maybe a few hardware supplies, right, and a battery bank or two for your energy and fuel, they could have had a good, maybe 4 months, maybe 4-5 months solid, quite happy, which is going to cover 95% of most of the SHTF scenarios are going to last 3 months as a max. If it's 6 months, it's different problems. But that's why it's important preparing for, because they're uncharted territories, right? So again, don't put over focus on your animals and your pets, particularly if they're ones that are a net negative influence, as in they're not going to help you. They're just going to take your time, take your resources, and if they get loose, they could kill you, like a snake or a tarantula or whatever your exotic pets might be, right? So just bear that in mind, because there comes a point in time where you got to be realistic, right? Anzac Gal there, Commando and Kitchen Queen need to hook up. They certainly do, don't they, right? And wouldn't they be a formidable force? So, the predicted outcome then for the animal lover: more effort and resources allocated to animals than individual. 2 months max. 2 months max I'm giving this person. And again, that's coming down to the security and protection. Look, 0 security and protection is like a month's worth. So here we go. This is the second to last one then. We'll fly through this. This is the gadget geek. I'm sure everybody knows a gadget geek in their life and come across one, right? These are classic. I'm a bit of a gadget geek. I mean, I'm an electronic engineer, computer programmer in 12, 13 different languages, this sort of stuff. I'm going to be a gadget geek, right? I'm into sort of latest tech. I treat, even as a bushcraftsman and stuff, I'm really keen bushcraft. Yeah, every year I do bushcraft for many, 10, 15 years at least. And I still like to include technology in my preps because why not? Anyone who knows my knowledge hotspot, for example, is a good example of where technology can be a force multiplier, yeah? So don't turn your back on it. So the gadget geek's actually doing an alright job. Medical supplies is a problem and hunting and growing is a problem, but we'll get to that in a minute, right? But over on the survival gear page on sigmaprepper.com, you'll see here survival gear up the top, right? But if you scroll down some of the products, this is free virus prediction tool here. Preparedness pack is coming soon. It's a relaunch of my original one with extra stuff in it. So this survival hotspot's a good idea of technology. The gadget geek is definitely going to have one of these, right? But it's not even a gadget. This is a prerequisite. The idea of this, we might as well view the product quickly while we're here. Did I even just click on that? Yes. So the survival hotspot is basically like a Raspberry Pi, and it will give you access. It's like an access point, right? And you connect to it with your smartphone, right? And you connect to the access point of Wi-Fi, and you'll get the window open up. And you've got everything you'd want in a crisis, right? You've got Wikipedia, the entire 6.2 million pages. You've got 160 Canadian prepper videos on there. You've got Minefield, some great entertainment, knowledge stuff. You've got the post-disaster resources library, just ram-packed full of so many PDFs and survival SAS stuff. Some stuff I can't tell you about. Yeah, forbidden knowledge stuff on there. Project Gutenberg with 60,000 books, right? So the idea is you get an SD card that's compatible to Raspberry Pi. You can use a Raspberry Pi 4, 3, 0. This is a 0 because it's most efficient, only uses half a watt of power. So great when you're off grid. 256 gigabyte, pack full of SHTF survival content. So this is a good example of where gadgets, you know, this is the packaging. This is basically what you get. And of course you got all your contents here, right? So this is a good example of where your, sorry, we need to get back to profiles. This is a good example of where the gadget geek is going to have stuff like this. So they're going to be great for knowledge. They're going to, you know, where the internet's gone down, there's no power, there's no internet. You'd be surprised how many people got no idea what life's like without being able to just search for the most basic stuff that you do all day, every day. Anything you've ever asked Siri, anything you've ever asked Alexa, anything you've ever searched for just briefly, like how to make whatever ingredients or how many milliliters in ounces and whatever. All that's gone, right? So you can see the importance with the Sigma Prepper Ultimate Hotspot and why it's important. But so the gadget geek is going to do well with stuff like that. But by relying on technology, let's have a look at the outcome here. Only investing in exciting things and ignoring critical, boring stuff. So it's critical stuff, but to the gadget geek, it might seem like boring stuff. So a good example is the medical supplies, right? I don't want to deal with medical. I don't care about bandages and plasters. I just want, night vision goggles, GPS trackers, yeah, satellite phones, off-grid solar panels, yeah, this kind of stuff. They don't, they're not worrying about medical supplies, and the problem is that really, to tell me that you can survive for 2 years, which is what these people say, that I'm good for 2 years, my man. But the problem with it is that it's just not the case, because medical supplies becomes complex, which we're going to look at in a minute when we compare the 1 month to 6 months to 1 year, and you'll see where things come in. But the medical supplies, once you get past 1 month, you see, unless you've got some specific things that are going to deal with disease and lots of it and things like this, because of, dysentery starts setting in, and, hygiene is a problem once the sewage stops, the water stops, and so on, right? So there's lots of other problems that you're going to be coming up against. If you ain't got medical supplies, there's no paramedics, don't forget. So even doing quite well, really, let's face it, yeah, water's good, food and storage is all right, 6 months worth, but, if they put some of this money into some other things, we could be looking at a good 12 months worth of real comfortable preparedness stuff there. And of course, this is the Sigma Prepper. I mean, this isn't me directly, but this is how I'd like it to be, subject to budget. But And you'll see the only one really that's slacking back there is the pets and animal supplies, because that is subject to, if you're going 18 months, then you have to start questioning, unless those pets are going to be really useful to you, you have to start questioning how much you're going to start putting into bales of straw to keep your horse alive as a form of transport versus an e-bike and an off-grid power generation, for example, right? So you got to be clever about it, because you can go too crazy and it's just not really necessary. Like I say, 95% of scenarios are going to be over and done with within 3 months maximum. If it goes on more than that, that's when we're going to have some serious problems, and we're going to be coming out of maybe only 20% of the population at the end of it. So, even Son said he needs to get some of what hospital gave him to have on hand in SHTF times. Definitely. Stuff like antibiotics and things you're going to need as well when the disease starts kicking in. So in terms of the predicted outcome for the Sigma prepper, right? For the one who's got it all in hand. Somewhat comfortable riding out 12 to 18 months of complete disaster. No squirrels on sticks. That's what we're aiming for. So, prepper profiles, which one are you? I hope you enjoyed that as an insight into what we've been looking at. But basically, prepper profiles, this is what we looked at then. The unprepared, with zilch, nada, the obvious problems there. The hunter, the kitchen queen, the commando, the animal lover, the gadget geek, and the Sigma prepper, which is the only one that gets the blue tick. Of course, classic Sigma blue, as we like. So thank you, everyone. Let's get into the next one then. So now we're getting into the incremental pepping. We're only on slide 9. There's 42, but you won't see the rest. Don't worry, you will, but you won't. Here we go. Incremental prepping. Now, as we're going to see, prepping for 1 month in an SHTF scenario, is not as simple as just having 4 times the amount of stuff as you need for 1 week, right? So prepping for 4 weeks isn't as simple as having 4 times as much stuff as you have for 1 week. This is the key, right? The cost is non-linear over time. So we're going to be analyzing the specific preparedness needs, right? We want to be forming a plan with a long-term preparedness goal. So if you know you're going to say, right, I want to have enough preparedness stuff to be good for 6 months, yeah? Then it means that you set out with the intention for your prepper profile graph, yeah, to reflect that in your preps. So if you know that you're going to be trying to achieve 6 months, then you know that you need to incrementally prep each one of these things in order. Or together, ideally. Do you see? So you need to ensure your prep plan is SMART, as in SMART objectives, specific, measurable, achievable, realistic, timely, right? And you can use the Eisenhower matrix to organize that into your most important, least important, most urgent, least urgent, as we talked about. So you want to make sure you organize your preparedness stock items so you can always keep track of what you've got of what and how many weeks worth, months worth you've got of what. Water, energy, yeah, cans, whatever. So you want to be thinking only the survivability of each purchase. So anything you're going to buy, you need to ask yourself the question, am I going to directly see the benefit of that in my survival preps? When you're buying stuff for preps, I'm talking about. Don't forget, you've got people like the gadget geek who's just buying stuff they want to buy because they're passionate about it, not because they need it. Right? And there's stuff they're not buying because they're not familiar with it, they don't have the knowledge in it, they're not confident in it. Which is why energy is always a big one. I see a lot of people have got no provisions for any energy. No solar, no battery backup, no nothing. It's going to be so tough. So tough. So you need to make sure you're staying current as well with your accurate local intelligence, because the quicker you know something's going to hit the fan, this is why I put a lot of my attention into the SHTF Intel side of the Sigma Prepper knowledge and information shows, because it's so important that we make sure we're keeping up to date with what's going to hit us in the you-know-what first, right? And that's the whole point of the SHTF Intel. So that we can always know what are the things that we need to prepare for the most. Because the sorts of things you prepare for riots and civil unrest, for example, are very different to what you prepare for with fuel shortages, for example. Yeah, if it's going to be epic levels of riots and civil unrest, then of course you're going to put most of your money into things like your vests and, you know, plywood sheets to go over your windows and these sorts of things, right? And of course you need to be flow like water, as Bruce Lee would say. You need to be adaptable and be ready to change your strategy if the situation changes, right? This is why having a bug out option is important, hence include budgeting for bug out options. But that will be another show. We'll be specifically talking about dedicated to bugging out the option C, that's called bugging out the option C. Option A is homesteading, option B is bugging in, bunkering down, basement, attic, whatever, hiding, covert, and then you got option C, obviously, the bugging out GTFO. So what we're going to do now then is we're going to compare prepping over time, right? We're going to compare prepping over time and see what it looks like. So we're going to see, because this is going to be a demonstration, right, of how non-linear, the non-linear nature of prepping is. Because, like I say, it's not a case of buying 4 times the amount of stuff you bought for 1 week to last 4 times as long. Doesn't work like that. So we're going to see, what does 1 week of preps look like versus 1 month? Yeah? And how much do we need to spend for 1 week versus how much we need to spend for 1 month? So let's look at it. Let's get into it. Right. Here we go. 1 week. This is what a week looks like. Now, bear in mind, these numbers here, the $500, I would say it's kind of arbitrary. It's not arbitrary. I mean, I did calculate through reasonably accurately based on just an average for an individual. I wondered if I had my calculations here for how much. Oh, yes, here we go. We've got, so I did allow certain things for certain things. This is just my notes from the other day when I was developing this show for us this week. But you can see I've done a little list of little prices that I came up with. So it is based on, I think it's like $150 a week for food or something like that. But anyway, so you've got 7 days of water and bottled drink, right? Now, in the UK, for example, bottled drink on Amazon, right, is like basically £1 a litre. Yeah? So, it's quite expensive stuff. Now, 1 week of food, that's up to you, innit? Right? I mean, depending on what you like eating. And the question mark there again is this is for 1 week. Don't forget you can survive 3 weeks with no food, right? So really, you don't really need to spend any money on food if you want to survive 1 week. It's just nice to have because you're going to feel it, right? But you can theoretically survive, but who wants to? But you can probably survive on the meat that you've got in your freezer that's going to have to be eaten anyway because the power's going to be off, so your freezer stuff's going to just be like within like a couple of days. So that's going to keep you going. Right? You're going to have whatever you got in your cupboards anyway, let's face it. So most people can make it through a week. But things like the water is definitely a problem. People come unstuck with the lack of water when the taps and the faucets stop running. A lot of people don't know what to do. Yeah? And of course, don't forget, the commerce has all stopped, the traders all stopped, and the shops have been raided, so there's no bottled water in the shops. And even if there was, you can't buy it. So 3 USB battery banks, 70 watt hour each, right? Now, to put that into perspective, this battery bank here, right, is about 70 watt hours. 70 watt hours. And the way that's calculated is just the amp hours. This is about 20,000 amp hours by the nominal battery voltage. So 20,000 times, which is basically 20 amp hour, 20 times 3.7 volt is the nominal voltage of those cells, giving you 74 watt hours. And the reason they do that is because there is a legal limit of what you can carry on onto an aeroplane, right? So when you go on an aeroplane, they don't like you taking more than about 70 to 80 watt hours of lithium battery bank in the cabin. So that's why they tend to be this size. So this is one version of it. I've got another one here. This is similar. This is a similar type looking one, right? So this is quite expensive, right? Because you want to get a decent one that's going to have a good cycle recharge rate, how many times you can charge it. You don't want some cheap thing. This is Anker. And the unique thing about this as well I like is it has the USB-C, right? So it has PD, power delivery. So this can give you 12 volt as well as USB 5 volt, right? But anyway, this is about $50. It's about $50 for one of these. For a good one. 30 to $50, right? So you're talking about needing 3 of those and to keep them charged all of the time. And that would be enough battery power to keep your torches charged up. Right? Keep your torches charged up. This is just a crappy one I keep on my desk, right? But to keep your torches charged up, to keep your ham radio charged up, right? To keep your critical stuff running and your normal little radio and stuff like this, right? 3 USB battery banks are going to get you through. That's even enough to keep your hotspot running, don't forget, with the Raspberry Pi and a smartphone, keeping that topped up. And don't forget, when the grid goes down, because the cell towers are going to go down, the first thing you want to do, and your router's going to go down, you're going to want to get your phone, you're going to want to put it into airplane mode straight away. You want to individually turn off the GPS, turn off the cell data, turn off the Bluetooth, turn off the Wi-Fi, and that will save a lot of battery power. Because if you don't, your phone's going to be beaming out full wattage trying to find a cell tower locally. If you can't find one, it will increase the power of your transmitter on your phone. It's a dynamic level of transmission, in case you didn't know. So when you're near a cell tower with your mobile phone to save battery, it knows it's near because it knows by the signal level, so it knows it's near. And what it does is it drops the transmission amount on your mobile phone to save power. Conversely, if you happen to float out to sea on your boat, right, accidentally, the longer you leave it, the further away you get, the more power your mobile phone is going to be beaming out to try and reach that antenna. But if the antenna's not there at all, your phone doesn't know. It's just going to sit there on full power, beaming it out. And your battery's going to go... So first things first is to put it into airplane mode and turn off all the cells data, all the wireless, all that stuff. So assuming you do that, and only assuming you do that first, 3 USB battery banks will be enough to keep your smartphone going, keep a torch or 2 charged up, and for the basics, you know, and a ham radio or 3 rocking so you can coordinate between you, right? So, of course, medical supplies, your essential medication. Of course, if you do need to take something specific to you, then you're going to need to get that figured out. And, of course, this is a problem because if you've got, like, certain drugs that require refrigeration or else, then you're going to have to flow that into the equation. You're going to have to flow that into the equation of your preparedness. You ain't getting that for $500 because you're going to need to have a fridge and a battery backup system that's capable of keeping that fridge running for a week. And therefore your medication supply for 1 week. That probably is linearly expandable per week, right? So limited basic security needs for a week. Like I say, you're probably going to get some extra attempts at break-ins. You're probably going to get some extra desperate people knocking on your door, asking too many times for help that you can't help, right? Great to see you in the house, Tilly Monkey Soup Pickle. See, he's having problems with signal over where he is right now as well. But yeah, so you don't need too much security stuff, but to have, you know, a few bits and pieces, even just a catapult and an air rifle is like good to go, right? Better than nothing. And maybe some good solid locks and things is included in security and protection, right? So... pets and animal supplies, of course, don't forget about your animals, you know, make sure that they're all hooked up as well, and that includes their medication, because I appreciate a lot of people have pets that are on medication, so don't forget about them. Hunting and growing, no point, no need, and hardware and spares, you know, very unlikely something's going to break in a week of usage, so again, you know, the medical supplies, just the usual stuff, right, a typical medical kit, you should be okay. So, very different to 1 month, though, because check it out. It changes considerably after 1 month because at this point things have got seriously gnarly. Things have got seriously gnarly. And now we're not talking about, you know, 4 weeks of stored water, drinkable water, is a different problem to solve. 4 weeks of 4 weeks of food isn't really, but you're going to need to start figuring out a way to cook it. You can only eat your cakes and you go through your barbecue coals that you happen to have in the garage so many times, you know. For a month, most people have spanked through any food they've typically had, and they've spanked through any barbecue, whatever, and it's too smelly anyway. And check it out, look, energy and fuel. Theoretically, you see, 4 weeks worth of these, if you want 3 of these for 1 week, you're going to want to have 12 of those. 12 of those to last a month and keep them topped up all the time. 12 times 50 buckaroonies is $600, right? So you got to think it through. But we'll look at that in a minute, right? Security and protection. Yeah, small off-grid power system recommended here for 1 month, right? For $4,500. Now, medical supplies is a bit of a different thing as well, because you're going to need to have things that are going to include things for sutures, for cuts and gashes, with people who've been trying to get into your property, maybe chased away. You've probably got, you know, a cut from a knife or glass, and things like this where you've been doing things you're not used to doing. So you're going to need to be having suture kits. You're going to need to be having knowledge about how to fix brakes and things, because that's also likely if you're getting into fights and things. This is 1 month, don't forget. This is 1 month, and things get Mad Max pretty quick in 1 month, right? There's just, the medical stuff goes up exponentially. The stuff that I would take for a weekend bushcraft camp, my medical kit is pretty good for that. It's been refined over many, many years of bushcraft. And I think the sorts of things that I tend to do to myself, or that tend to happen, right? But for 1 month, it's like having bushcraft camp weekend every day. So you're going to need lots of band-aids, you're going to need lots of skin glue, you're going to need lots of things. And again, I'll be doing a show all about medical supplies. I'll be doing a dedicated show for all of these topics down there, basically, in great detail. So yeah, medical supplies ramps up. And of course, things like having knowledge about how to fix wounds and how to keep things clean and how to treat burns is going to be important. Burns particularly, because a number of people are going to be burning their house down from using candles and paraffin lanterns that they've dug out of the garage. Believe me, there's going to be more accidents than you've ever seen happen around your neighborhood before, right? Especially after the 1 month time. Security and protection then. Don't forget, 1 week we had limited basic security needs, right? Now we're into the 1 month. It's personal protection, comms, defenses. You're going to need to have comms because you're going to need to coordinate with either your neighbors, the people across the road, your family in your own house, with front bedroom, back bedroom, on the lookout with your ham radio, someone coming from the rear, someone coming from the side, right? So you're going to need to be in communication with a grid down, because you have no other way of doing it. You want to be shouting across the house, they're coming round the back, they're coming round the back. Ooh, misses. Ooh. But personal protection is going to be more of a thing in 1 month than it ever is on 1 week. Big time. This is where it goes up exponentially, not linearly. Hence the 4,500. You notice that? Now let's go back to the 1 week. Look, $500. 1 month, 4,500. So $2,000 would be 4 times $500. Don't forget. So this is, you know, this is significant. This is more than double the equivalent cost. So like I say, it's not linear. It's not linear. And I'll show you how I arrive at these calculations in a minute. And again, 1 month of pet needs, hunting and growing, not really much need. Everyone can supply enough food to go for a month. So not really much point in hunting and growing. Hardware and spares, you are going to need for 1 month, because you are going to have windows broken. So you are going to need to be able to fix them. You are going to have things like stuff smashed up that breaks. You're going to have stuff that you're using every day that you're not used to using that's going to break. So you're going to want to have spares, you see. You're going to want to have some basic tools to fix things, to take things apart, to MacGyver things, right? It's going to be super important. Now, let's do some prepping comparisons, shall we? So water and filtration, what we're going to do is we're going to look at 1 week, and we're going to take the water and filtration, and we're going to compare what it looks like from the 1 week to the 1 month. So you see here we've got a 7 days of water or bottled drink, but the 1 month solution is 4 weeks of water, or that could be a button basic filter. So what do I mean by that? Check it out. This is the problem. This is in real terms what that actually looks like, right? you'll see here, to survive 1 week, ideally you want about 5 litres of water each. Yeah, you could probably get away with it with a couple of you without using any for washing up or anything like that, just literally for drinking and cooking. So 5 litres a day, which is about a gallon a day, is what you're aiming for. So this is 8 gallons of bottled water is what's going to get you, on the left there for the 1 week, is what's going to get you a week's worth of water. And that's going to set you back about $40. It's about £40 here in the UK, like I say. You can buy a 3-pack of 5 litres, that's like 3 gallons or 3.5 gallons that works out to be, something like that. And it's £15 for 15 litres, bottled water. So if you imagine the size of it, so each one of these jugs next to me here, this is what it looks like for a month's worth of bottled water. Each of these is 1 gallon jugs. These are like 5 litres each. These are massive. This is going to take up an entire spare room, right, of water. And it's going to be $160, 4 times your $40, right? However, what's a cleverer way to look at it is to say, well, moving here on the left-hand side is a month, on this side is a month as well. So this is now just comparing 1 month and 1 month, but it's just a different way of solving this problem. So rather than the $160 worth of bottled water that we don't know where we're going to put it, because that's lots, right? That's 32 of them, is it? Or is it 40, I think it works out to be. Or, I've got one of these in the garden here, a water butt. A water butt. The actual one I've got, I think, is 210 litres. Cheers, everybody. 210 litres. So that water butt that sits in the garden, and of course this is subject to, again, our considerations, subject to where you live and how much space you've got. But subject to space, it's clearly a cheaper option too, because you can buy your water butt for about £40, £45 in the US when I looked for a 200 litre-ish one. They're about $50 or so, right? And then you can get a water filter, which is a very good water filter, easily good enough for a month's worth of, without having to replace the filter, for about $29.99 on Amazon. That was like £30. The water butt is £40, that's about £70, $80 is fair enough. But either way, and you just fill it up with your hose pipe. Just fill it up with your hose pipe, right? Just get it in the garden, fill it up, right? You can put some sterilizing tabs in there as well if you want. But the idea being is you'd be putting that through the water filter anyway. But it's a far better solution than it is all the bottled water and things like that with no filter, because the amount of money you're spending there, you might as well have bought a water butt and a water filter, right? So that's the point there. Now, we can do that same comparison on the 1 week versus 1 month with the energy and fuel. And it's just as interesting. Because check it out. Just as a reminder, this is the 1 week. This is the 1 week list of preps where we've got the 3 USB battery banks. And again, we're talking about a 70 watt hour, which is a nice size. It's kind of enough to, you can put it in your pocket and walk around with it. And this will charge your smartphone maybe 5 times if you're lucky. Or top it up maybe 5 times it's supposed to, but realistically. Now, comparing this, switching to the 1 month view of the energy and fuel, would be either 12 of those and having to keep them topped up as well because there's no way to recharge them, or a small off-grid power system, right? So like I say, the 1 week here, 3 USB battery banks for 1 week, but for 1 month, it's a different problem to tackle. So let's look how we're going to tackle this one, because what we end up with, look, this is comparing 1 week to 1 month of battery banks. In fact, that's the exact battery bank that I've got here. How beautifully planned that was, Andy. Thank you. So anyway, yeah, this is the battery banks. Now, you can see it's $400 worth of battery banks here, and you've got to keep them topped up. And they're limited usage because you've only got USB power. So that's all very well if you've got your ham radios can run off USB charging and all the rest of it. Most things do. But there are things that don't. So you can see already, scaling this up is already looking like it's a problem. Because it wants to be rocking around with 12 USB battery banks. So what you can do instead, this is comparing the 1 month solution to another 1 month solution. So these are both to sort of solve the 1 month problem of energy. And as you can see, buying 12 USB battery banks to have a month's worth of preps, you're spending $400. So if you're spending $400, you might as well sort yourself out with a charge controller. This is only a cheap one here. This is not an MPPT one, a multi-pile power tracking one. So you've got PWM based charge controllers, pulse width modulation, which are okay. But the MPPT multi-power point tracking charge controllers have a microprocessor built in that constantly track the wattage of the solar power based on when the clouds go over, and it won't allow it to try and drag any more than the most efficient level of energy that you should drag out of that solar panel at the time. It's about 30% more efficient than one of these, but it's about twice the price. But for 1 month's worth of energy, you'll do well just with a PWM $25 charge controller, right? You look at about £1 a watt, roughly. $1 a watt for solar. Assuming you're buying them in like 100 watt panel sizes. Less than that if you're buying bigger. But if you're buying some flexible solar panels, let's say 200 panels, that's $200 for two 100 watt or one 200 watt solar panel. About $1 per watt. Subject to inflation when you're watching this, right? So you've got $200 for your solar panels. You've got $50 or whatever for your charge controller, and then your battery bank there at the back there, just an RV marine deep cycle battery. It's going to set you back about $1 per amp hour. So I recommend 120 amp hour type size deep cycle marine battery, or RV battery, leisure battery it's sometimes called. 12 volt will cost you, so 120 amp hours is going to cost you about $120. So $120 plus your solar panels there is $320, $80 left over for your charge controller. Job done. $400, you got yourself an off-grid solar power system that is perpetual juice. Yes, that's right, perpetual juice. And really all you then need is just maybe 3. Just get 3 of these, which you would have already bought, don't forget, for buying your 1 week's preps, right? For your 1 week's preps, you've bought 3 of these. So still buy 3 of these, because then you can recharge these continually on rotation using your off-grid power. You see? So, and that's why I like the, looking at Ampere, yes, this is exactly what I was saying earlier about the PD, the power delivery, right? So, this one, I've got another even juicier one around here somewhere, but these are good because these can deliver 12 volts with the USB-C PD. It's not just USB-C, it's the PD that's important, the power delivery. And it also means you can charge them much faster, which is important when you've got solar. You may only have a lot of sunlight in the winter. You may only have the sun out for 2 hours. So it means that you're going to want to get your stuff charged up as quick as possible while the sun's out. So I hope that makes sense, right? In terms of that false economy trap that I talked about earlier, right? You can spend $400 or you can spend $400. One solves the problem long time in a really good way. One solves it not very good in a bit of a crappy way. So bear that in mind, right? Now, so just to recap, this is what the 1 week looked like. And this is what the 1 month looked like. So what we're going to do now, though, is we're going to check out and compare prepping over time, and this time demonstrating the non-linear nature of prepping costs with the 6 months versus 1 year. Yeah, so we're going to look at what does 6 months worth of preps look like versus 1 year's worth of preps look like. And how much do we need to spend? Well, we don't know. But check it out, 6 months, right? We're talking $19,000, and again, you know, that was based on a bunch of stuff. That was based on some calculations I made here. So, but it's a rough arbitrary type number just to show again, $4,500 times 6 is $27,000, right? So it's not linear in this respect. Prepping for 6 months is potentially much cheaper. There are some caveats for that though. Well, I say it's not cheaper to prepare 6 months and 1 month. I mean, it's cheaper than the cost for 1 month times 6. You just buy different stuff is the thing. Right, so 6 months is a different story. So quality water filter, you ain't getting away with a jug. A jug's not going to cut it. As I said, that jug's pretty good for a month's worth of preps, but after that you're going to want to change the filter. You're going to want something that can, you know, do a lot more water, a lot quicker filtering and stuff like that, right? And transport. Why transport? Well, because 6 months of water means 6 water butts. You know, the big 200-litre water butts. Imagine what that would look like in gallon jugs, right? You saw what 1 month looked like in gallon jugs. Imagine what it looks like for 6 months. It's 6 times that amount. 6 water butts in your garden. It's just not realistic, right? So the transport for the water and filtration is because you're going to need to be going to the lake. You're going to be needing to go to the local reservoir or something to give yourself options. And a quality water filter, because you're going to be putting nastier and nastier and nastier water in your filters as time goes on. Just face it, that's a reality. Every day that goes by on an SHTF, the water you're putting in your filter is going to be worse and worse and worse. So you're going to need to just at least strain it through t-shirts and gauzes before you even put it in your filter. But you're going to want a quality water filter nonetheless. Food storage is a different situation again, because of course 6 months it means that you're going to want to be doing good storage. You're going to want to have food buckets that aren't going to be able to be attacked by mice and rodents that are going to eat all your preps because you haven't put them in buckets, for example, with lids, right? You're going to want to make sure you're doing a canning and you're doing a vacuum sealing at least, where you're sealing your rice into vacuum bags with things like the oxygen absorbers inside, which is important. You don't want to be... I've got this here, don't forget, because on the Sigma Prepper quiz we had last week's Sigma Prepper live show, we looked at oxygen absorbers, don't forget, with one of our questions on the quiz last week. Again, another 7 Prepper quiz questions tomorrow night, don't forget, don't miss that. So yeah, just whack an oxygen absorber in your vacuum sealing bag along with your food, and then vacuum seal it, and job done basically. That oxygen absorber will take all the oxygen out, which is what helps breed all sorts of nasty stuff. So it'll give you extra storage for a good give you like 9 years apparently vacuum sealing you can get. Freeze drying will get you 25 years worth of shelf life, and of course tins are going to be good for several years. You just need the way of cooking it, and again that brings us to the energy and fuel, where we need to have the right cooking fuel. We need gas, tanks of gas, you know, for camping. Gas stove is what I recommend. It's pretty low smell rather than fires, burning wood and things. Quality off-grid solar panel system. At this point, you're not going to get away with some cheap PWM $25 charge controller and some car battery you've taken out of a garage that you had lying around, right, for 6 months of juice. It's just not going to cut it. And you'll see why specifically in a minute. So, yeah. First aid becomes a different problem, don't forget, because after 6 months you've got all sorts of sanitation problems. You've got all sorts of problems with things like disease control. You've got ailments. You've got injuries that you're not going to be used to having because you're going to be doing so much manual labor work, carrying things around. The transport is going to include transport, you're going to the lake and back and things like this to get water supplies. It just, everything ramps up big time. And of course, your security and protection, you're going to have epic ammo, epic surveillance, good tactical setups with people around you. You're going to need to have people working in your house or your neighbors with you as a force to be reckoned with. An individual, Sigma on their own, can do it, but it's going to be a struggle. You're going to need to do it with technology, right? Cameras, FM radio, surveillance bugs hidden up the road and stuff like this, right? More about that in another show, right? So pet spares, extra meds and books, because you're going to need books because your pets are going to probably have issues that you're going to need to sort out yourself, because you're not going to have pets and vets. Vets, don't forget. And again, fishing, microgreens, basic veg, you might as well start getting and giving that a go. But again, the fishing, I try and avoid that. You don't want to be leaving your property as much as possible. So that's an interesting, thanks Amphir, saying here 2 times 11 kilogram of propane will typically boil 800 litre of water with a heat exchanger based kettle. Good to know. So that's a good way to estimate how much you're going to need of what by when. So wide range of tools and miscellaneous spares. Lots of things are going to go wrong after 6 months. You're going to be using your tools much more frequently than you're used to using them. You're going to be helping your neighbours and things to shore up their defences as well. So you're going to wish you had miscellaneous spares, tools. These are going to be good bartering items as well, don't forget. Because it's not just having the tools to barter them. It's having the tools to allow you to help somebody do something as a form of barter as well, don't forget. Yeah, and to build that community. Because after 6 months, you're going to be starting to worry about building a community, believe me. Now, when you get to a year, this is a whole different ball game. Right? Because for a year, again, storing that amount of water, I mean, unless you've got a swimming pool in your garden, if your swimming pool is a saltwater swimming pool, Ansett girl, if you've got a saltwater swimming pool, you've got a bigger problem using that water than you have if you've got a chlorinated swimming pool, because at least you can use Berkey filter carbon filters, which won't get the fluoride or the chlorine, but your Berkey based PF2s will. So these are fluoride filters. Yeah, PF2s I think they call them. And then you've got the carbon filters for the Berkey type filters, right? So that's a carbon one. That doesn't take away fluoride, but it does take away everything else. And the taste of anything nasty. So that's perfect. But what the fluoride ones do is to take away things like chlorine. So if you use, and what happens is in your Berkey filter, is this actually goes on top of that. So the water goes through there first at the top, then through there, then out the bottom, and then into the drinkable basin that is the clean, fresh, perfect water, right? So there are ways to overcome it. If you've got the right filters, you can use water out your swimming pool as long as it's not a saltwater one. You'll need desalination technology. So 1 year is a really big problem, right? And this will be a show that I do all together, which is about prepping for the long-term stuff, right? So I won't get too much into it. But one thing I do want to look at is a few of these things that we're going to pick out and we're going to break into, right? Because I'd like the show to be kept below 2 hours. That's the plan. So water and prepping comparisons then. So we're going to compare the water situation again, but this time between the 6 months with the quality water filter and transport and the 1 year where we're talking about having to have a well or a freshwater lake and spare filters. And so this is what that looks like, right? So this is 6 months versus 1 year. So what I'm saying is that for 6 months, you're going to need to have a quality water filter. That's like a Berkey. So a Berkey water filter is what uses these. Nice big jobbies. In fact, there's 2 of these. You can use 4 if you want to have a higher flow. And if fluoride ones if you want as well. But the fluoride ones generally only last about 6 months depending on how much you're using your Berkey, right? Ours, this is why this is here, because this is an old one. I can't afford new ones yet, right? But, and I so need them, it's not even funny. But the fluoride ones and our carbon ones could do a replacing as well. The ones that are in there are a bit scummy. But the point is that you have a decent water filter. And the transport there, you'll see, is like a little trike thing which attaches to a bike, to a push bike. So, for example, for 6 months scenario for water, unless you've got a swimming pool or something like that, right? You can use your filter. But if not, you can just take a barrel, a water container down to the local reservoir or whatever you've got nearest to you, fill it up, bung it in your little thing with your bike attached to your bike, and then cycle it back, pour it into your Berkey after maybe filtering it with something else simple first through some fabric, into your Berkey, job done. But a year, you can't be doing that all day every day for a year, man. So for a year, you want to be looking at having a well or a fresh lake on your doorstep, because again, every time you're traveling to and from that lake to get water, you're at risk of being attacked or mugged or having an accident, falling off your bike or anything. And if you've got a well, don't forget you're going to need to maintain the off-grid power solution to power that well. And you're going to have redundancy systems as well, as you'll see in a minute when you're talking a year's worth of energy power. Even renewable doesn't last forever. So it's a different situation, because if you're going to last a year, then I'm going to be asking you, do you have a well or do you live near a lake? Because... So what we're going to do then, let's have a look, shall we, at the energy and fuel, and we see how that compares. See how that compares from 6 months to 1 year. And of course, what we looked at before with our little USB battery banks and having 12 of them for a month, there's going to be a different situation for 12 months, right? So we had cooking fuel, things like gas and stuff, and quality off-grid solar power system, or the like. Wind turbines as well is good. And then the 1 year, we're talking redundant systems and we're talking fuel treatments. So there's some extra stuff here we didn't talk about before. And this is why. It's because this is comparing the 6 month look to the 1 year look, right? So on the left hand side there, you've got the cooking fuel quality off-grid solution. Now, one thing you'll notice straight away is the charge controller in that solution on the left hand side is different from the one it was on the 1 month off-grid power. So this is why I'm talking about a quality off-grid power solution. Now that's going to be more than $400 right there. That's going to be more like $1,200, $1,400. You can see we've got a few extra solar panels. We've got 2 battery banks instead of 1. And we've got a really good quality charge controller that's going to get you about 30% more energy just because it's MPPT with the microcontroller built into it. And it's super, super solid electronics. That's a Victron one. That's one that I've got. I need 2. I've only got 1, so I'm already half down on my preps. Mine runs a dual system because I have a shadow that goes across my roof, so you're actually better off having 2 separate charge controllers with one solar bank, another solar bank going into the same battery bank. Again, another show I'll do about that. So the idea is the battery banks need to be good ones and your charge controller needs to be good ones, because that cheap one that I showed you on the 1 month solution, we could flick back to it, but I think it's a way back. That one, they notoriously break after about 6 months, so I wouldn't recommend that for a 6 month solution. So Victron is what I recommend. Now, the year is a different situation, right? Because how many cycles, question mark. And the other thing is, when you're talking generators, if you're talking fuel generators, things like this, right, you're going to need to have stabilizers in your in your fuel, right? Because you can't just put a load of fuel, especially a year's worth, you can't put a year's worth of gasoline in some jerry cans in your garage and then expecting a year later to open them up, pour it into your chainsaw or whatever, or or into your generator, your electric generator, and expect that to be okay. Right? Because gasoline doesn't keep very long at all. Most people say 6 months, some people say 3. Depending on how you're storing it, right? But one thing that can help you is things like additives, but it's only going to do so much. You're going to really need to make sure your storage of fuel is absolutely epic. As the temperature needs to be stable, the container needs to be a really good quality, stable plastic based container with a really good valve on it that doesn't leak the gases. It's really tricky stuff, so it gets very complicated. So depending on how much fuel you think you're going to be able to keep, it also depends on how much stabilizer you can put in that fuel to keep it to even survive a year. That's why propane's better. It keeps for a long time. So how many cycles on your battery? I'll tell you why this is a problem, is this. Now, those that were following last week on the Sigma Prepper Show would obviously have played along with the quiz that we had, right? We had the Sigma Prepper quiz where we looked at exactly this. Was it 2 weeks ago? It was episode 2. So you'll see the video on the thing, the Prepper Quiz episode 2. And we looked at the problem with different battery technologies having different charge cycles, right? So 5 seconds. There we go. Just sorting out some bots like you do. How many times can you discharge and recharge your batteries? Well, I'll tell you what, this battery you see featured here, right, a typical marine battery this is, and leisure battery. So what you're seeing is that's the second one down, a deep cycle marine battery. Now, a car battery is very different. Don't think that's the same as a car battery. It's not. A car battery, or flooded battery, cell battery, they're not designed to be discharged and recharged and used every day. They're designed to be discharged about 10% when you start the engine, and then your engine keeps that battery topped up continually using the alternator, which converts your rotational energy from the engine back into electrical power to recharge the battery ready for the next time. And of course, that's how you can keep your lights on and your windscreen wipers on and everything running from the battery, but it doesn't drain it down while you're driving. So you're only going to get about 50 cycles out of a car battery though. Don't think you're going to last a year doing that. You're going to get 50 cycles maximum. They're not designed for that at all. You're going to get calcification and all sorts of nasty stuff happening on the plates inside the cells. So you'll see on the right hand side there's 50 cycles, 50% DOD. Now DOD is depth of discharge. So what that is it's how much you've discharged it down. If you've got it down to 0%, you'll never get that car battery recharged. It'll destroy its capacity. So this is assuming you only discharge it 50% and then recharge it. Discharge it 50% and then recharge it. You'll get 50 cycles out of that and it's done. So that's about a month of charging it, using it overnight. The sun comes up, gets charged again, using it overnight. The sun comes up, gets charged again, and this is a cycle. Can you see the problem? Because you get to the deep cycle marine batteries and you're talking about 300 to 600 cycles on that battery technology. And even that's assuming 50% discharge, not 100%, 50%. You're going to be done. In about a year, this is the problem. You want to prep for a year, you're going to have to include replacing your off-grid battery bank, because like your iPad or your smartphone or whatever, after a certain time, it just doesn't hold the charge anymore. You know what it's like. It's like, oh man, it lasts 2 seconds and it's done. Yeah, your battery bank's going to be the same. It's the same with these. It's no different. Yeah, the more cycles they get discharged right down and back up again, that clocks as one cycle. Now, the reason that I'm not in that position is because I've purposefully over-engineered my battery bank so that through the night, despite all the stuff that runs off it, all my desk lights around here, my router, CCTV cameras, DVR system, wireless other bits and pieces that run off it constantly 24/7 off the battery bank, my off-grid system. During the night, because I've got 600 amp hours, like having 5 of those batteries in a row, the big chunky ones, right? During the night, by the morning, it's only down to 95% charge. It only takes 5% out. Yeah? It only takes 5% out. So that doesn't count as a cycle, right? But if you're stretching it and you've got one battery and you've got a couple of solar panels and you're putting it out on the lawn each day and bringing it in with that battery, if you discharge that battery down too much overnight, you're going to limit how many times you can do that. So by the time you get to 1 year of prepping, your battery is not going to last 20% what it did. And of course, you've got things like lithium phosphate. This is a MPPT charge controller, which is an MPPT one, which is lithium. This does lithium. This is a small one that I have with part of another prototype engineering project, which is actually charges a lithium phosphate pack. So this is LifePo 4, and this is 21 amp hour. 21 amp hour at 12.8 volt. So you say 12.8 volt times 21 equals 268 watt hours. Divided by 74 means that that's the equivalent of 3.5 of these. But the difference is that with the lithium phosphate, as you can see from this graph here, you're talking 2,000 to 4,000 recharges. 2,000 to 4,000 recharges. And those that were following the Sigma Prepper quiz the other week, where I was talking about battery technologies as part of that quiz, I've also got one of these LTO. I've got 6 of these LTO cells, which are somewhat new technology, but you'll notice with these lithium technologies, the big difference is that this is 80% depth of discharge. 80%. So that means that I can use 80% of the capacity of I can discharge it right down, and it still hasn't got a problem with it. It just look at me and smile, and I can do that 4,000 times. This is a 4,000 pack. It's quite expensive. That was about $450 for that lithium phosphate pack. So it's a lot of money. But it's a lot of juice packed in there, and I can recharge that thing in an hour. I can pump 20 amps into that, right? Easy peasy. And I can charge it 4,000 times, and I can discharge it 80%. So if you want to be surviving your solar off-grid for 2 years, let's say, then you're probably going to be better off investing in a lithium phosphate system than you are a lead acid deep cycle system, because the lead acid, if you're using too much of that, those cycles, your capacity is just going to be shrunk. So let's do a quick finish up then with the comparisons with the security and protection between the 6 months and the, because there's a big difference here as well with the 6 months and the 1 year. Right? So with the security and protection, we're talking for 6 months, we want tactical surveillance and lots of ammo, right? But for 1 year, we're talking about rural environment and team group and fitness. Because, why? Well, because, to be honest, how much? This is why you can't put a price on. There's no price look on the 1 year. Why not? Well, because to survive 1 year does not include being in the city. If you're living in the city, there's no way you're surviving a year in the city. Let's face it. So your preparedness plan, if you plan to survive if you believe that we're going to be in a 1 year grid down scenario, which is pretty possible, solar flare would do that. Send us back to the Bronze Age. Yeah. Send us back to the Bronze Age. So if you're serious about having any chance of prepping for 6 months or 1 year, 6 months and 1 year plans do not assume that you're living in the city, because it's just not viable. You're better off being in the woods with an AK and nothing else than you are being in the city with all your preps. Let's put it that way. So you got to be realistic, because your environment is going to be really important. How many houses are near you? How many gnarly people? How many gangsters? It's going to be way more important than how many tins of beans you've got or how many water fills you've got, right? Because bugging out is a different situation. Bugging out, you're not carrying your Berkey filter with you, are you? Right? Like, for example, this is more what you got when you're bugging out. Right, this is like a water. This is like a water pouch. And in here, I've got a few bits and pieces that you would expect. Things like a clean canteen, yeah. And it's single walls. You could just hang that over the fire and boil it. There's a cup in there as well. But also in here, I've got things like the classic soya filter. Soya filter, right? So this is just one that you can suck up from a stream, essentially. There's not many people that know about this, but one thing you can do, which is a little trick, is you can get yourself a one of these. Gravity Works Platypus. Yeah? The Gravity Works Platypus. Now what this is a secondary carbon filter. And I bought some silicone hose here, which is like food grade silicone hose. And this goes on to here. Perfect diameter, as you'd expect from me. I'm a bit of a perfectionist. But then I can link these two together. This one takes out 99.99999 of all bacteria, all nasty stuff and arsenic. And this one is a carbon filter like the Berkey filter. It's like a miniature version of this, basically. And that takes away all the taste. Yeah? You see the flow direction? It's on the wrong side, but... but the flow on these things are really slow. You're not going to survive a year with this. If you actually try and use these things, it takes a long time. If you get like a Coke bottle, and you can screw this onto the Coke bottle, right? And you have gravity, that'll take ages. That'll be dripping out for ages, man. I mean, you'll be waiting all day for like 1 litre. So you got to be aware of what the actual value of these things are. So this is my emergency. Well, it's not. This is one of the emergencies, small little things that I use. But this is for my sort of water. But this isn't designed to last long. This isn't going to survive a year. Bugging out, is it? Right? And equally, are you realistically going to be buying... Are you going to be bringing your full-size Berkey filter with you? Probably not. So these are the things to consider. And again, like I say, we will be having a dedicated show to do with the 6 months and breaking it down in more detail, right? So the considerations, just as a reminder, because as we've gone through here today, you know, your climate environment, the local laws, things like your property, whether it's off-grid, cabin in the woods, or whether you're an apartment block in the city, there are still things you can do. Don't forget, that's only when we're talking 6 months. You can survive 1 month in the city if you know what you're doing. And we'll be looking at these things specifically with different shows, talking about city prepping versus things like living in more of a rural area. We're going to have different problems, but problems in both cases, right? So what have we covered then? And stay tuned, because there's more coming out in a minute. I want to finish up on, because we've got some shows coming up which I want you to decide on and to give me your feedback in the chat below, and live chat with us to now as well, and in the comment section. So please hit the like button if you've learned something or feel my efforts will have helped others to learn. And do obviously share this video with people who are getting into prepping that you've convinced it's worth doing. This is probably a really good video to start with. It does break things down, I hope, as easily as possible. But we've looked at why we should prepare. We've looked at everybody's unique individual considerations, which you need to take into consideration. We looked at the urgent versus important Eisenhower matrix to help people understand where to even start, what to get started on, how to organize things into important, urgent, not urgent, not important. Of course, the prepper profile examples, which was fun to look at. Some of those different people, the hunter, the kitchen queen, don't forget, the gadget geek, right? Don't make those mistakes, right? I did at the very beginning. I went off buying all sorts of stuff and didn't really think about other stuff, right? And I've been correcting that myself over the last 10, 15 years myself, right? So incremental prepping, we looked at that. And it's a non-linear thing, like we looked at with the differences with the battery bank options, with the water filter options. Just things change, right? And we need to have more of a considered approach to that 1 week versus 1 month, particularly, is the big area of most likely needed, is the 1 week to 1 month scenarios, right? But I'm going to be, well, 1 month to 3 months is what I'm aiming for, right? So yeah, and of course, the exponential challenge to be surviving comfortably for 6 months to 1 year, just because of what everybody else is doing around you. I've just noticed up there, slide number 42, look, that doesn't include any of the prepper profiles or anything. So yes, this will take me several weeks to put this show together. So as a debrief then, the objectives were to learn how to prepare with maximum efficiency. I think we've done that. Minimize the risk of missing out on critical items and other common prepper oversights. See working examples of false economy traps, which we've done. We looked at the difference of buying $160 worth of bottled water versus $80 worth of water butter and a filter. Ensure we are getting the most survival juice out of our prepping squeeze. Talking of which, that's time for a drink. It's like a drinking game, isn't it? There you go. So, which topics are most urgent? So here we go then. Let me know what one of these topics we should do next week as the next Prepping for 2022 series of Sigma Prepper videos. Each Wednesday, coming live 11 PM UK time, 6 PM Eastern time. So we've just done the advanced principles of prepping. I do hope you have enjoyed tonight's show. Please add it to a playlist. Create a playlist. Just do the add button to playlist. Create a new playlist. Call it Prepping for 2022 or advanced, or just call it something like prepping videos, things like that. It will really help it as well. And make sure you get some comments down below to help the channel as well, right? But share it on your social media. Send it to your friends privately as well, if you think that they could benefit from it. So, bugging out. grid down scenario, timeline of a disaster. That I think is going to be happening this winter. So I'd really like to get that shared. Bugging out the option C is a fun one. There's a lot of unique information in that one. So I'm really looking forward to bringing that one to you. That's important. Ham ready communications and SHTF. I know that's a really important one for people. I've been having conversations behind the scenes. That seems like something that everybody needs help with. Getting their ham radios programmed, set up, do's, don'ts, 101s. Things like that, right? Security and defenses for homesteading. That's a great show. I hope to bring that one to you as well. But I want to hear from you. I want to hear from you as to the things that are important to you, the things that you want to know about up front. I can do a show about whatever you want. I've been doing this for 20 plus years. Just challenge me, you know. That's all. We all want to learn together. And so these are just some ideas. There's about 30, 40 other things that we could be doing shows on. But in terms of what I think coming up soon, we need to be looking at some of these things, right? So, don't forget as well, during the week, we have always got all of our super duper stuff that's always rocking. We have our tier artificial intelligence analysis reports that come up on the Mondays. Don't forget, so do look out for those. 8:15 a.m. on the UK time, midnight roughly, Pacific Standard Time. They come out. So do join in with the on the Mondays, and then of course we have the Tuesdays, which is what you're watching now, on the Tuesdays, which is obviously Wednesdays, what I'm talking about. Tuesdays is the SHTF Intel report, and again, link in the description if you missed it, yesterday's one, but that's a good way to get a good update on the SHTF, what's been hitting the fan around the world. I'll do that every Tuesday as a live report. Yesterday happened to be the Nord Stream pipeline, so again, link in the description to check that one out, because it's definitely one not to miss. And then we have the SHTF survival scenarios, of course, on the Wednesdays that you're watching now. And those thumbnails look kind of like this. So look out for those ones. That'll be every Wednesday, 11 p.m. UK time, 6 p.m. Eastern time. And also, we have the, without forgetting, our super popular, the live show for preppers, basically, the Prepper Live Show, the Sigma Prepper Live Show. So join us tomorrow, basically less than 24 hours time. Whoosh, you got Cheesy Muggins' face here again, so don't miss that. 29th September, 11 p.m. again UK time, 6 p.m. Eastern. There's just so much. So please subscribe or you'll miss out. Don't be doing that. Loads more to come. It would be a shame not to have it. So that, my darlings, has been Advanced Principles of Prepping with yours truly, Sigma Prepper, for our Prepping 2022 SHTF scenarios. It's been absolutely lovely, and thank you. So let's jump back to base camp then, and let's see what people are feeling. Great to see you all. Oh, thank you so very much, my Danger Bob. Streamlabs hate you. Is Streamlabs not working? Thank you for your support. What a great show, Andy says. Robert McNamara. Laughs me, give me the clap. Giving me the clap, girlfriend. Thank you, my darling. I really appreciate it. Thank you. Really appreciate your kind words. So thank you so much for being here with us. We'll catch up and report from yesterday. Thanks, Sigma Prepper. Great show. Thank you so much, Caroline. Lots of useful info for sure. Really looking forward to next week. So don't forget, let us know what you want to know about, and I'll be putting the show together for next week. Thank you to everybody who's been. Nicely done, Sandy. Thank you, Andy. Thank you, Sandy, my darling. And I've spoken to Sandy a few times this week. She's been putting up with me. My wifey, it's our anniversary today as well, or was our 24th year together. Not wedding anniversary, but as in how long we've been together, which is what we include. 24 years. So yeah, love you, my darling. Thank you for helping me and putting up with my nonsense for the last 6 months that I've been building Sigma Prepper. Because don't forget, I only came up with a name on like less than 6 months ago, and I've built everything since then from scratch. So please bear with me. This is essentially a prototype launch show tonight, so I hope you've enjoyed it. It seems to have gone okay. We don't seem to have had any hiccups particularly. But yeah, thank you so very much. And Netrum Design is saying large boom here and the power went out. We don't want to hear too much more of that, do we? Because there's stuff going on here as well. So that is basically... That's the Prepping 2022 for 2022 series, and we steamed through the SHTF scenarios this week. I hope you enjoyed it. There won't be time for Howls and Growls this week with Hugo. It's way late, and we've been rocking for now 2 hours and 20 minutes nearly. So now we're going to be dipping into the VIP after party. So thank you to our wolf pack on Discord, the VIP gang, basically, of us who like to get together on the Discord server. We do voice chat. And all of the wonderful VIP patrons that have helped me get this far, because I have no other income from anything else. This is my full-time job now. I don't do anything else, and I'm struggling over here. So, if it wasn't for these fine people, I'd be more than struggling. I wouldn't even be here. So thank you so very much, because I am 100% independent. I do have to make everything on my own, and I've got no one to help me, and I don't have any budget to get anyone to help me. So thank you so much. And there's no monetization, no adverts, no nothing. Not sponsored by anyone, not owned by anyone. These are the ways that you can help keep me coming back every week. Links in the description for your convenience. And Patreon, a good way to support me. You get so much back from that as well, value. So please sign up to patreon.com/Sigma Prepper. Super easy. 4 different levels of subscribership. With every level you get access to the Discord server, VIP parties, links below. Get yourself in there like these people have. Check them out. Let's hear it in the comments below and in the chat for our VIPs for helping me even be online right now. Thank you so much for helping support the channel. Couldn't do it without you. You are part of the Sigma Prepper family, and when this channel's massive and big, we'll all remember who were the first guys who helped this happen. So thank you to each and every one of you. So let's do it then. Links in the description if you'd like to help. But in the meantime, what can I say? Back to the gnarliness, and we're going to get into it. Thank you so much for your happy anniversary wishes. I really appreciate it. And it's been a lovely show tonight. Really appreciate you being with us. I hope you've learned something tonight. I hope it's been of value. I know it took a long time to put together, but it's worth it if you guys are enjoying it and if anyone's learning anything from it. And if you've got somebody that you think could benefit from this video, again, like I say, please do share it. Either via email or just with WhatsApp or however you want to share that video to your friends and family, and whack it in one of your playlists with some nice keywords in it, and that'd be great. But in the meantime, don't forget, we're back tomorrow night for the Sigma Prepper live show, the live show for preppers, which you don't want to miss. But in the meantime, from me, Andy, what can I say? You know how we do. Love, peace, and progress to the pack, I guess, is what we do. Thank you, everyone.